So Final Fantasy has been honestly one of my favorite video game franchises out there, and Final Fantasy holds a very it holds something dear to my heart, honestly, because this game was one of the I'd say when I was younger was one of the best JRPGs that I would have played that really made me feel different, It really opened my eyes to a lot of other JRPGs out there, and I played quite a lot growing up and stuff. And just Final Fantasy had an impact on the RPG genre. Like, by far, it is always talked about when it comes to any JRPG talk or anything regarding that. And it has a legacy behind it. Like, it is one of those things. And I really enjoy when Final Fantasy games come out. I always like playing all of them. And the beautiful stories that the dev teams over at Square Enix is able to just pull apart. Like, Final Fantasy is just as much as a work of art, and I feel like each game deserves or has some form of legacy behind them. And always in anybody's top 10 or something of that nature, they always have some form of Final Fantasy games. But the real reason is just even after so many years of me playing JRPGs and so many different Final Fantasies, Square Enix always finds a way to make me just more excited about these games. And honestly, I can't be more excited now because as you can see, I'm cheesing about it. But it is the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy IX. By far, one of my most favorite. If you were to ask me now, what's your favorite Final Fantasy? It always starts 9, 7, 6, 9, 7, 6, and I think 8 is right around there too. 9 has always been my favorite JRPG that Square Enix could have made. There's of course other ones out there, Legend of Dragoon, there's Parasite Eve, there's just so many more out there. And honestly, with Final Fantasy IX having its 25th anniversary, this year marks a huge difference, right? This is over a special milestone for fans that are of Final Fantasy series. The 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy IX, a game that really holds a special place in many hearts, and as well as one of my favorite Final Fantasies, right? The fact that it's been 25 years, god damn, dude, I remember the very first time me playing it, hearing the soundtrack for the very first time, and just seeing what else Square Enix and the brains of the entire team had to them. Final Fantasy IX had a unique art style, right? They went back from this high-tech stuff that was in 7 and 8 to this back to old, the way the color palette looked. They had this this orangish brownish look to everything. It had this medieval look to it. The storyline is of course great. It definitely pulled a little bit at my heartstrings throughout Zidane's and Garnet's adventure. Vivi, my boy, all of these characters all have great personalities that really make them special, and still even to this day, some of my favorite Final Fantasy casts to play with was just a beautiful story. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about, just kind of a little bit of just reflecting back on the 25 years and the overall speculations of Final Fantasy IX's remake, Final Fantasy IX stands out quite a lot, right? It's a Final Fantasy, if we go through the timeline, it is Final Fantasy that returns back to its overall fantasy roots, and not nothing super high fantasy. It's a just basic classic fantasy theme, because like I said, in Final Fantasy 7, we went from House 6, where it was still that medieval, old fairy tale kind of vibe to it, with a little bit of, mechs and stuff, all that good stuff. 7 really pushes it past there with everything's high tech, everything is corporations and all that good stuff. And then there's 8, which kind of falls a slightly bit into that same category, and then we get 9 returning back to the classics. The team itself thought it was just man, we are back to our original roots. This is what they used to do. Fantasy was the main point of Final Fantasy, right? I think 1 through 6 really had that true meaning behind fantasy, where 7 and 8 goes into like that high fantasy, very giving me reminiscence of like Star Ocean, right? How Star Ocean is like sci-fi out the wazoo, tech-ified everything, and 7-8 falls in that same boat. So we get 9, where they went back to their roots, back to what made them so different. It almost feels like, and bear with me here, this is just like a little headcanon for me, but it feels like something that is overall it's like a remake for the team. Like the team, I've seen a lot of interviews with the team, and everybody just really enjoyed at what they did for Final Fantasy 9. Just feel like they were going back to their roots, you know. But now we have this strong desire, right? Fans have a strong desire for Final Fantasy 9, and honestly, I'm one of those fans. I'm one of those fans. Like, I can acknowledge that this is one of my favorites out there. And the fact that we could be getting a full-blown remake. And overall, like, for Square Enix has been on a trend right now with a lot of remakes. Like, first of all, they did the entire pixel remaster for Final Fantasy 1 through 6. Then we, of course, get the Crisis Core remake. And then we get Final Fantasy 7, we have Remake, then we have Rebirth, and of course we have the third game on the horizon. And, you know, they just been on a trend. So, of course, anybody would think, what could Final Fantasy 9 Remake look like, right? What could it overall look like? Because you already know we're going to get the visual upgrades. We're going to get gameplay enhancements. We're going to get even maybe some potential story expansions, right? And one thing that I feel about these things is that I don't want them to remake and do free flow combat or action RPG combat like they did with Final Fantasy 7. Like, no, we don't need that. We don't need that type of quality. Just keep it turn-based. Keep it how it was. Just give us that remake. Then when we're talking about visual upgrades, we do not need to spend $300 gazillion to make this game. And I did check out that Square Enix's new like future plans were like, oh, hey, let's spend this X amount of money for this big project that is 3 games apart. And Square Enix also realized that even just launching the game on PlayStation was also not so good, because they could have picked up way more sales and numbers if they just released everywhere. So that's a little bit of the behind the scenes backlog for Square Enix. But overall, we don't need super crazy budget for Final Fantasy 9 Remake. Honestly, I feel like they could have been like Oka Studios when they did Visions of Mana. You can kind of give us like that type of quality of game and art style, like the cell shadedness and all this, but we don't need to go crazy, right? This is what I'm saying. Like, we don't always have to do everything AAA. And please, for the love of God, do not release it for 3 different games. Like, that $70 a pop for each game is crazy. Granted, years and years ahead, but Jesus Christ, just give it to me in one go. But I will say, and end it off is this, that the demand for a remake is loud. But will we get that answer? And that's what the 25th anniversary is for, right? So I do want to talk a little bit about the 25th anniversary, because now we're at the 25th anniversary. And for one, Square Enix opened up a full-blown story. And I actually want to show you guys this information like live. So let me hop on over and show you what it is that we're looking at here. So we go over here. And of course, if you go on Square Enix official store, as of them announcing that this is their 25th anniversary, they was like, all right, bet, drop the store, my brother in Christ. We have 20 items here. We have a Garnet figure. We have Zidane's figure, which, oh my God, they both look great. $65 a pop. We got a necklace we have the silver necklace with Garnet. We have the entire vinyl tracks of Final Fantasy 9. We have plushie figures of the majority of the main cast: Beatrice, Steiner, Vivi, Aiko, Quina, Freya. And then we go down some more. We get a little bit more. We got the Kuja plushie. We got Amaranth's plushie. We have card sleeves. We have a gaming mouse pad that I cannot wait to get. We have a music locks box. We have some dolls for Vivi. Like, this is really crazy that they're really going in for Final Fantasy 9. And I overall just am so excited, because There's could be a lot. Now, of course, we're kind of a little bit of a hyping up a little bit because Final Fantasy IX's actual 25th anniversary don't happen till like July. So we do have a couple of months this here. But this overall, they're really going in. Not even get me started. We got the just a huge demand for this merchandise. Like, everybody really has been wanting this. Square Enix is answering. They're answering to that. And the fact that they're answering to it really showcases that, like, they're really listening in. Now, of course, when it comes to the talks of Final Fantasy IX and why do I think that it could be this, right? So there were rumors of Final Fantasy IX's remake as it was we were announced to it or something of that nature back in like 2021. The leak basically was like Final Fantasy VII's remake PC version, Kingdom Hearts 4, and then we of course get a little bit more information regarding Final Fantasy IX back in 2023 that a remake was actually indeed in the works over at Square Enix. So it was reported that it is on the horizon. And in the simple fact that I have a feeling, and my theory is this: we're about to be receiving, honestly, some absolute fire. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about the future of Final Fantasy IX, right? So the current state of the franchise and all of the things that happen. So of course we have what was recently released, Final Fantasy 16, right? Now, Final Fantasy 16 was a crazy game. I have not got a chance to play yet because I am on PC, so eventually I'll be making my rounds back to it because it did release for Steam. But Final Fantasy 16 was such a crazy game. Of course, I kept track of the sales, I watched people play it, and I'm always impressed at what they have done every time they like to go big and beyond. Ben Starr is playing Clive is just magnifique, right? I just love him as a voice actor. Then of course we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the follow-up to Final Fantasy VII Remake, which remake came out back in like a couple years ago. So we have Remake, Rebirth, Final Fantasy 16. Then, of course, we have all types of other things. Like we have the mobile game, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, and just overall really just show like, hey, they care. Don't even get me started. They even did a crossover event of Final Fantasy IX onto Final Fantasy Ever Crisis. So the fact that they're really showing us like love for Final Fantasy IX, it's just fathomable. It's just crazy, right? And don't get me wrong, I would like all Final Fantasies to be like remade, or some of the older, like the younger ones, right? Just overall, the evolution of the series always keeps rising and rising and rising, and they try to top themselves all the time. Now, of course, this is not a true next mainline Final Fantasy like how it would be for Final Fantasy 17, but they don't have to go crazy for this. Square Enix needs to start saving the money. We can use that. We don't need, if that $300 million, whatever it took to build Final Fantasy VII remake and all that good stuff, you could have chopped that up and made us some other good AA games. And that's what I feel like Final Fantasy IX is going to be about. And I honestly feel like that is the direction that Square Enix and Final Fantasy is going moving forward. That we're gonna, hopefully they stick to their roots. If they feel the game would be better with a more action-oriented combat, then definitely go ahead and do it. But if the game can survive with turn-based, it can. And I feel like Square Enix has lost faith in turn-based. Do you know how many games out there, any JRPGs, regular RPGs, that are turn-based and are absolute bangers? And one's a banger, and we haven't even received it yet. Look at Clear Obscure Expedition 33. That game's turn-based is insane. Not to mention for all the people who were able to play the demo for that. It is insane. It shows that people still like turn-based. They are trying too hard to appeal to Western audiences, which that was another conversation that they talked about. But I'm like, we don't need to stick to your roots. Sometimes you don't have to. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy for either or. I can do action, I can do turn-based, but I'm happy for either or. And these games, as they get on, they can kind of adjust whether they believe will be turn-based or not. Think of another series, like let's go to Sega real quick. Let's look at the Yakuza series. They spent almost 6 or so games to doing action combat. Then they made a crazy decision to make Like a Dragon, and then Like a Dragon, and then they did the Hawaii Yakuza Hawaii when he's in Hawaii and stuff. Infinite Wealth, that's what it is. Infinite Wealth. That they made those turn-based, and then like they had Yakuza Gaiden, a man who erased his name. They went back to their action. So just using that as an example, Square Enix can go the route. Sega is always pumping out these games because they're being smart, a little bit smart with their money. I could be wrong, but just for man, I've been seeing some great quality from the games. I love their games as well. But I feel like the remakes will play a overall future role into the franchise, and I feel like as we keep moving forward, the game and the series is going to actually evolve with it. And honestly, they can use any form of like tech to get it done. Like I said, we do not need crazy budget. Just work with what you have, upgrade a couple of things, make it look good. And hey, if you want to add some stuff that you feel like that was never really fully shown, you could do a little bit of that. We don't need to do a whole multiverse, this and this. Don't get me wrong. That could have been the original direction, but just Jesus, we do not need it to be 3 games later. This is just hopeful thinking. I'm really hoping that when the actual anniversary comes around, and I know that we're going to be having a Summer's Games Fest and a couple other gaming events where, a game could be announced. So, hey, that is a overall thing. And honestly, just there is an appeal for the Final Fantasy series and its ability just to connect with overall generations of gamers. There are people even today who's never touched a Final Fantasy game in their entire life is now seeing the quality of these beautiful stories and these characters and the gameplay and just overall watching it. I feel like Final Fantasy does have a long history, but it will also have a longer future because they are trying to do things that are overall just amazing, and I just can't wait to see what next that Square Enix has a store. I'm pretty hyped for Final Fantasy 9 coming out, Final Fantasy Remake. Hopeful, like full-blown announcement date, if it's even close, where they are currently at with it. I'm really hoping they show us a lot more when it comes to July and when it comes to the actual anniversary for Final Fantasy 9. But let me know what you guys think about in the comment section below. This episode was mainly just like a little, let's get hype and let's talk about Final Fantasy 9, one of my favorite Final Fantasies out there. But the question goes back to you guys. Which is your favorite Final Fantasy, right? I need to hear it. I want to talk about it. I want to chat with you guys. If you don't want to be there, hop on over to Discord. The Discord has everything you need. We could talk, chat it up, because I love talking RPGs with any of my crew. Other than that, I need you guys out there to stay safe out there. And it's been your host, KSTTV, signing out. Peace.